Welcome to the Mean Lady Talking Podcast. This is the podcast that tackles tough questions about relationships, life, love, and loss. It may not be the advice you want, but is probably the advice you need. And now here's your host, grief therapist, motivational speaker, relationship expert, best-selling author, and attorney, the not really mean lady herself, Susan J. Elliott.
Good day, everybody. This is Susan Elliott, host of Mean Lady Talking Podcast, and today we're talking about the Standards and Compatibility Inventory. Now, most of the things that I'm going to talk about on today's podcast are things that are completely unique to the Getting Past Your Breakup program. Even though the Standards and Compatibility Inventory doesn't show up until getting back out there, it's very important to look at it, to read about it, to have it in your mind as soon as you break up. Getting back out there is not a dating book. It gives you an overview of healthy relationships, what they look like, and what you need to have in order to have a healthy relationship. Getting back out there talks about communication styles. It talks about boundaries. It talks about a whole host of things that have nothing to do with dating. But it does talk about dating, and it does talk about early relationships, and it does talk about merging families. It talks about many, many things. It also talks about what real love is and isn't. And if you notice, I don't use the term true love. I use the term real love because real love is about real life. And it's about having a real partner to tackle real life, which is life on life's term. Many times when we start dating, we're looking for things that really don't matter. I've said it myself that my criteria when I was dating was smart, cute, funny. But there are many men in this world who are smart, cute, and funny who just wouldn't make a very good partner and who wouldn't have made a very good partner. I had to be more specific than that. And if you're not more specific than that, you're going to wind up with a whole bunch of stuff you don't want. Eleanor Roosevelt said, if you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for anything. And nothing is truer than in relationship. You have to have some idea of what you want and not blue eyes, blonde hair, black hair, brown eyes, tall, short, medium, whatever. It has to be more specific than that. Now, over the years that I've been doing this, and I've been doing this work for more than 25 years, I came up with what I call the 3 a.m. person. And anybody that has followed me for any period of time knows what the 3 a.m. person is. The 3 a.m. person is there's a raging thunder and lightning storm. All of the electricity has gone out. The sound has woken up the baby, and it has frightened the dog, but the dog still wants to go out, but is afraid of the rain and the thunder. And now the roof is leaking. So what do? You or your partner should say, okay, you find the candles and then get the baby. I'll put a pot under the leak and then I'll get the dog out and we'll get through this together. That's the 3 a.m. person. And it doesn't have to be a domestic scene that I have just painted for you. It's about whatever it is you want in life. Maybe you want to go into business together. It's the person who will be there, who will not blame things on you. I mean, I've been in relationships where practically the thunderstorm itself was being blamed on me. But you don't want somebody who's going to say, I told you to call somebody about that roof. I told you I didn't want the dog. I told you that we needed to put the candles such and such. That's the blamer. You don't want the blamer. Don't want the blamer. And I talk about this in Getting Back Out There, different styles of communication. And one is somebody that has to blame everything on someone. Things can't just happen. It's got to be somebody's fault. If you've always been around people like that, and I was because I'm in the family that I grew up in, everything that went wrong had to be somebody's fault. And you also don't want somebody who's completely irresponsible and unable to deal with life on life's terms. You don't want somebody to say, thunderstorm, baby, dog, out of here. See ya. You take care of this. I'm booking down the road. Now, if you want to go into business with somebody or you want to go into your own business, you want a partner who's going to be able to help you face whatever challenges come along. You want somebody that's either going to be able to pitch in or somebody who's just going to be able to support you while you're building your business. You might be independently wealthy and want to sail the ocean blue. Want somebody who is going to understand that sometimes there's storms at sea and sometimes the boat springs a leak or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what the 3 a.m. scene is. It's about each of you grabbing hold of some part of it and supporting each other through it. I've talked about my husband, Michael, that when my son was assaulted viciously in Massachusetts and we were living in California, I flew back there. I got him. I brought him back to California. And I did not want him going back to Massachusetts 6 months later with a lot of bills, and the hospital bill was like $50,000. And we paid that. And Michael never said, he's 22 years old. He shouldn't have been in the bar at 3 o'clock in the morning. All these different things that happened that led up to the assault. He never said that. I had a friend who had given me the money to fly back, spend days in a hotel while he was still recuperating in the hospital, and then I had to keep him in the hotel for a few days before he could travel with a brain injury. And then I had to pay her back when I got some money. Michael never said anything. Then his ex had asked us to pay her once a month instead of every week in child support. And we did that for about a year, and then she opened up a child support case and stated that we had never paid her. And even though years later the court found that we had paid her, we still couldn't get the money back. We had to sue her, and she wasn't good for the money, so Michael wasn't going to pay the lawyer any more money than we had already done so. And I didn't yell at him. I didn't say, "Your ex, take us to the cleaners for a year." No, I talked to the lawyer. And this was before I became a lawyer. I was actually in law school. I talked to the lawyer. I gathered all the paperwork. I did a whole bunch of things to get him into a position to challenge her on these different things that she was doing. At no time did one of us say, "Hey, this is your ex, your kid, you're this, you're that." No, we didn't. It was us against the world. That's your 3 a.m. person. Now, nothing that I just described to you with my son's assault and the ex with the child support, neither of that happened at 3 a.m. And they were both ongoing issues. But we never once snapped at each other over it. We never once said, "This is your kid or your ex or your problem." It wasn't what we did. It was us against whatever problem there was. And it's not that I wasn't frazzled. It's not that he wasn't frazzled. It's just we were not taking it out on each other. This whole concept of taking out whatever befalls you on the person closest to you is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's the thing that a lot of people do, that many, many people do. It's not what you should be doing. Now, one of the issues about the 3 a.m. person is you don't know from your first date if this person is going to be a 3 a.m. person or not. And I have had so many people say to me, "Oh, well, I went on a date with this person, that person. There weren't any sparks. No chemistry." And I have to tell you that many times chemistry, what we're calling chemistry, what we're calling sparks, is simply your dysfunction saying hello to their dysfunction. It's much easier for you to find somebody with whom you have a physical chemistry. You don't even know each other. And you're saying, "Well, we don't have chemistry." But healthy relationships don't feel like crazy firework and all this other stuff. You're calm. You're not looking for somebody to fill you up in empty places or to be something that nobody else should have the right to ask somebody else to be. Things go wrong in life. That's life. Stephen Levine called it the terrible dailiness. And each of us needs as much help as we can get to get through the terrible dailiness of life. Now, let me explain to you about how we get from the horror show of your breakup to the perfect 3 a.m. person. That is through the standards and compatibility inventory. Now, I tell people to start this the minute you break up, because there are things you don't want in another person ever, ever, ever again. And it's really good to be aware of that when you are first breaking up, because as time goes on, you're going to be less and less inclined to worry about certain things. Now, the reason that I tell people that they have to start making their standards and compatibility inventory early on is because it's something you have to commit to. You have to take things And you have to make 3 columns: acceptable, unacceptable, and might be acceptable for the right person. And when you make that list, you should have some idea of what happened in your last relationship that you don't ever, ever, ever want again. And I tell people, as you work through the book, Getting Past Your Breakup, you will come to the relationship inventory. And at this point, it's very important to understand how the relationship inventory and the standards and compatibility inventory go together. Because as you're working through the relationship inventory, this is not something that should be done early on. You can see things that you missed, things that you accepted that you shouldn't have accepted, so you can put those things on the not acceptable column of the standards and compatibility inventory. There are things that maybe a jury is a little bit out on, like, I'm not sure how I feel about this, but the important thing is for you to commit to your list once you have them done. You don't want to start dating and not have done this, because you'll meet up with somebody, the cute, smart, funny person, and you haven't been dating for a long time, you haven't been in a relationship for a long time, you haven't been hugged and kissed for a long time, and all of a sudden there's Mr. and Ms. Blue Eyes, looking at you and liking you, and everything's hunky-dory. The standards and compatibility inventory at that point can't compete with that. The standards and compatibility inventory has to be something that you commit to long before you're ever ready to date. It has to be something that you have arrived at and you have committed to yourself absolutely. The minute the red flag comes up, the minute anything that's on the unacceptable list comes up, you are out of there. No ifs, ands, or buts. If it's an unacceptable, it's an unacceptable. You have to commit to yourself that you're going to walk. Now, another part of both getting past your breakup and getting back out there is boundaries. I talk about boundaries in both books, and the reason that I do that is because it's some of the most difficult work you will ever do. You have to commit to the fact that you have the right to set boundaries and that you will set boundaries. You have to commit to the fact that this is your list. And as I say, in getting back out there, you do not put your standards up to a vote. When I was single, and sometimes my friends would have a boyfriend, who did this or that, and I would say, I would never put up with that. And they would tell me I was too picky. They would tell me my standards were too high, and I would say, fine. If I never find a guy that's going to be different than what you're describing, that's fine with me. I'd rather be alone than put up with this nonsense for 5 minutes. And my friends would think that I was crazy. But I told them, I said, I don't put my standards up to a vote. If all my friends think that I'm too picky, I don't care. People will say things like, oh, every relationship has issues. No, every relationship does not have issues. It's possible to be in a relationship without a lot of issues. Or every relationship goes through a rough patch. No, they do not. Only people that have only been in bad relationships say this because they're bargaining with themselves. Now, when I talk about boundaries in both books, I talk about the 3-time rule. If you ask somebody for something twice and you don't get it, on the 3rd time you ask, you're now bargaining with yourself. And that concept comes from Melody Beattie. I'm very big on giving credit to where I have read something or something that I have used, incorporated into getting past your breakup and getting back out there. Melody Beattie came up with the 3-time rule, and I absolutely believe that you must ascribe to the 3-time rule. So if you're letting someone get away with something and you've asked them to stop it, and they don't, on the 3rd time that you need to ask, you're bargaining with yourself. It's time to either set a boundary or give up whatever it is. And I have YouTube videos on boundaries, and I talk about it then. I mean, sometimes you need to come face to face with the fact that you're not setting boundaries very well. And maybe that's what you have to work on. And it's easier to work on boundaries with friends, family, coworkers, than to wait until you get into a relationship. That's why it is so important to read both books, Getting Past Your Breakup and Getting Back Out There, long before you're ready to date. Because you have to have those boundaries in place. And you have to say to somebody, if you drive like a maniac, if you don't pay child support, if you smoke, if you won't help around the house, whatever it is that you absolutely must have in your next relationship, if that's not there, you have to walk. And chances are you're not going to be able to determine whether it's there or not on the first few dates. I always tell people, reserve judgment. You know, this thing about sparks, it's like you need to understand that many healthy relationships are just calm, and you're not missing something if there's not fireworks, because you could get fireworks with many people. You cannot get a healthy relationship with everybody. And it's not about taking something out of your life, it's about putting something in your life, because healthy relationships, people grow and learn together. And the more you come to realize that this is a dependable person, this is my 3 a.m. person, you grow to love them even more. You grow to have sparks. You grow to swoon. If you're swooning on the first date, it's completely hormonal, it's completely physical, and it means absolutely nothing. And if you don't swoon, that means absolutely nothing too. You have to give yourself time to discover other people and discover what they're all about and discover if you want that or not. And I'm not saying that there's no physical fireworks, but that there's not that as a determining factor. You cannot figure out what the determining factor is on the first date. I mean, when I talk about the 3 a.m. person, I mean, notice that I'm not saying, your 3 a.m. person is going to be the guy that bends you over the table and makes wild, passionate love to you. That's not in the 3 a.m. scenario. Another notion that you have to dispel is this idea of like everyone deserves second chances, or that true love forgives no matter what, because you're going to be giving second chances and forgiving the unforgivable forever. You have to make your standards and compatibility list, and that has to be adhered to no matter what. Now, one of the first things that you need to do in your standards and compatibility inventory, and this you can do as you're walking out of your last relationship, you have to do a you side of the list. You have to know what you've done wrong in relationships before and stop it. You have to have boundaries and you have to stick to them. You have to look at the red flags that you ignored in the past. Make a list of what red flags you ignored in your relationship that is now crumbling. Which red flags did you ignore early on? And what do you need to do to learn to keep yourself safe? You need to figure it out, and then you need to do it. You need to ask yourself, what quirks or habits of mine have caused issues in my relationships? Have you tried to play them down or hide them? Many times in early relationships, we're parading as something we're not. We're doing the job interview thing where you show up all wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and you want this employer to pick me. And you show up on dates like that. And then as you get to know each other, they realize that some of the things that you have portrayed is not true about you. So what are those things? What have you tried to play down or hide them from a new relationship? One of the most important things to do before you go back out there again is to decide what is it in you that needs to change, if anything. I mean, sometimes other people don't like things about us that we happen to like. Could be quirky, we could be eccentric, could be a whole bunch of things, but it's just who we are. You don't want to change because somebody else doesn't like something about you. You want to change because you have actually taken a good long look at yourself and decided these things need to change. My husband Michael and I used to have this. He used to tell me that life was too short to clean the house. And I used to say life was too short to live in a messy house. I mean, we had that issue. And when I made my standards and compatibility inventory, I did not want to live with another slob. I wanted somebody who was neat and clean. And Michael was the sloppiest guy in the entire world. But we opened up about that early on, and I moved my unacceptable to the maybe acceptable for the right person. And I can't imagine anyone prior to him being the type of person that I would have given that up for. I just wouldn't. And I wasn't going to go around nagging him either. So we compromise on getting a housekeeper. And I've talked about this in videos and I've talked about this in other podcasts. But many people don't want to talk about the things that they disagree on early on. They're afraid of rocking the boat. You have to know what happens if you rock the boat. Is your partner going to toss you overboard? Or are they going to say, could you please stop rocking the boat? I'm getting seasick over here. What is going to happen? What are you two going to do about this? Is there something that you can do? I mean, I said to him, I'm not paying housekeepers to clean up the mess that you make on the coffee table. And I'm not paying housekeepers to get your clean clothes off the pool table. So you need to put this stuff away before the housekeeper gets here. But I'm never going to ask you to wash a floor. I'm never going to ask you to wash a dish. I'm never going to ask you to clean the bathroom. God only knows what the bathroom would have looked like if I asked him to clean it. But I wasn't picking up after him, and I wasn't paying someone to pick up after some of these things. And that's how we compromise. If you have an issue like that, you have to sometimes figure out, which I did in my first marriage, whether is this what we're fighting about really what we're fighting about. And I talk about that in Getting Back Out There. Because my ex-husband went ballistic over the house time and time again. The house was absolutely spotless. It wasn't about having a clean house. It was about him being a control freak. You have to avoid useless arguments. You have to be honest about who and what you are. Because if you're not, you're both going to figure this out sooner or later. One person's going to feel really taken. You have to figure out early on if any incompatibility can be fixed. Or is it going to doom you? I mean, there's so many people that would say, well, yeah, I knew about this. And I've talked about this so many times. I had a client who on their first date, the guy told her that he didn't believe in evolution. And I couldn't even believe later on when they were going through a messy, messy, messy divorce that he had told her this on the first date. She was so into him, and everything was hormonal and going crazy, and they just had this intense, I mean, we want to talk about chemistry, you want to talk about fireworks, they had it. And let me tell you, she rused the day that she got involved with this lunatic. But the fireworks, the chemistry was so intense, and it was absolutely her dysfunction saying hello to his dysfunction. They had wild, crazy sex. And that wild, crazy sex, all the fireworks, all the chemistry, masked the fact that they were inherently incompatible. So that's what I'm saying. Like, don't give sparks or no sparks as much weight as people give it. So you have to look at those relationship patterns that have gotten you into trouble. And I saw this person time and time again jump after one date about, Mr. Wonderful, Mr. Wonderful, Mr. Wonderful, one date, Mr. Wonderful. I told you, you've got to stop doing that. You've got to listen. If somebody says, I don't believe in evolution, and you believe absolutely in evolution, there's going to be an issue. And everything that happened, that flows from those two different belief systems, came and wrecked their relationship. You also have to understand that when you make your list, negotiable, non-negotiable, maybe negotiable for the right person, you can make that as disciplined as you want. I had a list a mile long, and you cannot have your friends vote on your list, and you can't let somebody new whittle down your list to suit their bad habits and difficult tendency. It's your list. You keep to it. You can say you must be legally free, meaning divorced or never married. You've never been arrested. You're not behind in child support. You have a job. You have a car. And you don't have blah, 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 blah. If you pay attention to these big ticket items and they are absolutely non-negotiable, you don't have to think about it. When someone comes along and they're cute and they're nice and they're this and they're that and they say, honey, baby, sweetie, my little boo, I love you so much, you're going to say, yeah, really? But you've got all these speeding tickets and DUIs and you haven't paid child support in a year. Maybe you're not the person for me. But if you are desperate, hungry people make poor shoppers. And you're going to say, well, there's all these reasons why he didn't pay his child support. Oh, all these reasons why she had those DUIs. She was just very, very stressed out about everything. You can figure out a way to excuse inexcusable behavior whenever you have not committed to making sure that you're not with somebody who engages in this inexcusable behavior. You also have to know that if you accept something once, it becomes harder to walk away a second time. Sometimes you don't want to second guess yourself, like, did I leave too soon? But you have to know that some things should only happen once, and then you walk, and other things might be worth a second chance. But you have to know what those are. Know them and commit to them. This is a commitment you make to you. You don't allow anyone to talk you out of them. You have your list. You're not too picky. You're not too uppity. You're not too whatever. You're just taking care of you. There are some things that are nice to have, but they can be negotiable. You can say you're someone that likes to go sailing, but the other person doesn't have to like it. But if you're passionate about it and you want someone that will do that for you and go sailing with you and maybe learn how to sail or whatever, then that's a must-have. And you should not back down on something like that. I've told this story, and I think it's in Getting Back Out There. I had a client who was absolutely passionate about art history, the knowledge of artists and Renaissance painters, and she was dating a guy who seemed perfectly nice and normal, and he was willing to go to museums and art shows with her, but he didn't know that much about it, and he didn't really want to. He was just willing to kind of go along and be her escort, but he wasn't going to jump up and down over Da Vinci. Like, he just wasn't. And she was so upset that he didn't get ooh and ah over everything. And she dumped him. I didn't get it. Her friends didn't get it. And he didn't get it. But she was adamant about it. I want someone who's passionate about art. And you can have that as a standard. But you also have to understand that the universe of people who share that with you might be very small. And you might get a person who's not very nice who's all into art. You just have to know your priority. The most popular video and the most popular article on getting past your breakup is when the person you love doesn't love you. And that's an original to Getting Past Your Breakup. And I know other people have ripped it off like to the max, but that started here. And the number one standard for a partner must be, I don't care who you are, I don't care what kind of relationship you want to be in, I don't care how old you are, I don't care about your preferences, male, female, your ethnicity, your age, how many times you've been married. I don't care. I don't care. This is number one across the board, every single person. The number one requirement is wants to be with me. Nothing else matters if that's not there. But someone can want to be with you and still act like a jerk. So wants to be with me doesn't end the inquiry, but doesn't want to be with me does end the inquiry. Treatment is as important as wants to be with me. So either number 2 or 1B should be treats me well. It's as important as wants to be with me, if not more important. But if someone doesn't want to be with you, and I'm talking about your ex who just tra-la-la out the door, once wants to be with me is gone, they're gone and they should not be coming back. As I said before, I wanted smart, cute, and funny, but I forgot to add treats me well. Treats me well and wants to be with me should be at the very top of the list. I've been with a lot of cute, smart, funny jerks because I was looking for and at the wrong thing. Treats me well and wants to be with me should be number 1 on the list. Nothing else. It doesn't matter how cute, how smart, how funny. If they don't treat you well, say bye-bye. How someone treats you and wants to be with you should be before all else. You have to know what is negotiable and what is non-negotiable. And wants to be with me and treats me well is absolutely non-negotiable. You have to look at a person and see how they've conducted their life until now. A good partner for you is someone who is responsible and has all the necessities covered. You have to do all this before it's time to date, because it's very hard to step back in the throes of passion and suddenly go, oh, wait a minute, I don't know about this. Maybe not that. You don't start your standards and compatibility inventory the week you sign up for Match.com. Read Getting Past Your Breakup and Getting Back Out There and work on the inventories in the two books together. Your relationship and your life inventories help with the standards and compatibility inventory. Never stop judging a person on their ethical and moral choices. You have to be with someone who looks at life the way you do. If someone cops to a mistake, that's one thing. But if they make excuses for the inexcusable with others, they'll do it with you too. We all understand that everybody makes some poor choices, but some are not really ones that we should be understanding, especially if they're recent and especially if they seem to be a pattern. You have to listen for excuses, rationalizations, and justifications. If someone's capable of doing that with other behaviors, they'll do it in their behavior toward you. So what I'm trying to say to you is that you need to look at the ethical and moral choices that somebody has made. If someone's capable of doing things in their last relationship that you find abhorrent, they're going to do things like that with you. And don't listen to, oh, my ex was a crazy person, or this happened, that happened. You have to really listen for rationalizations and justifications. When you're in between relationships, that's the best time to decide what you need in a relationship, what you'd like to have in a relationship, and what you will absolutely not put up with in a relationship. It's also a good time to look at you and what needs to change before you go out and try it again. And sometimes that's a matter of, you get what you put up with. Stop putting up with things. Stop saying, oh, gee, maybe I'm being unreasonable. When somebody's trouncing your emotions, your life, when they're doing things that you don't want them to be doing, you need to figure out what has led you to be in bad relationships, whether it's family of origin issues, that's what you figure out through the life inventory, or even just doing an inventory on you in the relationship inventory. What did you do wrong? What did you put up with that you shouldn't put up with? Or what habits, quirks, or eccentricities do you have that other people seem to object to? And do you really need to change it or not? I mean, sometimes we're in love with some of our eccentricities. Like, yeah, I'm really sarcastic and don't hide who you really are. And don't try to talk up things just to make yourself more appealing. It's not a matter of will they like me. It's a matter of will you like them. Sometimes there are absolutely lovely people in the world who cannot remember to put the cap back on the toothpaste. Where does that fall on your list of priorities? Do you want to be the person that leaves the cap off, or do you want to be with somebody who remembers to put it on? I mean, which one are you? Maybe you don't want to fight about this. You want to put in your online dating profile, I leave the cap off the toothpaste. If you really care about this issue, please keep the line moving. And if you cop to some of your bad habits or quirks or things that you really like about yourself that you're not changing, you don't care, someone else will be honest about theirs. To have a healthy relationship, you need to know what you want in a partner. And a healthy partner will recognize what goodness you bring to the table. When you have your standards and compatibility inventory done with your good boundaries, it will help you to maintain opportunities for real love, for the kind where it's 3 o'clock in the morning and whatever it is you need to have at that moment. Not a blamer, not a bolter. You need to have somebody who's going to be there and say, you do this, I'll do that. Or you're the person who says, I'll do this and you do that. And the other person goes, gotcha, chief. If you're honest about things and you have your priorities straight, you won't be fighting over stupid things. Now, I told people that I was working on this podcast, and I asked people to give me a list of questions for a future podcast. And since we're getting to the end of this one, I'm going to answer a few of them, and then I will answer the rest of them later on. But the one that someone asks is, how much is too much information to disclose in the first few weeks of dating? And does that apply to your date too? I always tell people that you don't have to reveal your entire life to somebody. I went to a John Bradshaw workshop many years ago, and he talked about sitting there on a first date and saying, oh, I was a heroin addict, and, my mother was homeless, and my uncle was in prison. You don't want to start out like that. And you don't even really have to reveal some of these things. And I tell people that all the time. When I met my husband, Michael, I told him, which I told a lot of people, beyond the third day, because I didn't reveal a lot of stuff about me before the third day, but I was eventually learning that everybody did not need to know absolutely everything about me. And one of the things that I wanted him to get, and any other guy that I went out with more than a few times, was that I was a strong, capable person. So I didn't go on and on about the abuse in my life because I really didn't want the person to see me as somebody who would allow themselves to be abused. Now, I know a lot of people understand that it's not the abused person's fault. But there was something about my early dating after my divorce where I told everybody about it and I sounded like a whiny victim. And I wasn't sure exactly what I was looking for, but I wanted people to know that I was fragile and don't hurt me and all this other stuff. And it's not their responsibility to not hurt me. It's my responsibility to not put myself in situations where I'm going to get hurt. Many times we go through phases in our life where we're hurt and we're angry, we act out, and we live to regret it. We do things we don't like. We learn from those mistakes and we know we'll never engage in that behavior again. And there's no reason to tell somebody about these things. Not in the long term, not in the short term. I had a friend who was so angry about her boyfriend cheating on her and then breaking up with her that she went over and she put her foot through. She was dancing on the hood of his car, which he absolutely loved, and then she put her foot through the windshield. And she told guys about this, and she couldn't understand why they're running down the road. And she had worked on her anger. She had worked on her inappropriate responses to things, that she was never going to do that again. I mean, she got in a lot of trouble for that. And then to add salt to the wound, she had to pay him for all the damage that she did to his car. Another client of mine asked me how many one-night stands she should tell her boyfriend she had. I was like, why are you telling me any? She said, well, he asked and I didn't know what to say. She was in her mid-30s, and since her late teens, it was probably about 5, but it was more toward the teen years than the 30 years. And I said to her, you don't really want him to know the exact answer, and you don't want him to know the right answer. Almost everybody has something that they're not proud of. And there's no reason why somebody needs to know how many one-night stands you've ever had. It's a question that just shouldn't be on the table. Everybody has some things that they are embarrassed about. They know that it was such a horrific experience, like the experience of my client who put her foot through the guy's windshield. She was never doing it again. If the thing that you did happened last week, you might need to tell somebody about it. But if it's something that you did that you knew was horrific and you learned from it and you'll never do it again, you don't have to tell somebody about it. I mean, did you ever put a foot through your ex's windshield is not a question that typically comes up. On the other hand, there are things that you want to know and you have the right to know, and it should be revealed. You can figure out what to say and what not to say. You need to be honest with yourself and others, but you need to think about what needs to be revealed. Now, I know that somebody was dating her future husband when she was going through a hairy divorce with her ex-husband, and she gave him all these little details. And guess what happened? When they were breaking up, because they got married and then they were going through a divorce, he used every single thing that he knew she was afraid of because of her prior divorce. He used every single thing against her. You don't want to tell somebody the ins and outs, the nuts and bolts of every little situation you've ever been in. If you have a criminal record, you want to let somebody know that. But if it was a misdemeanor when you were 18 and now you're 38, you don't really have to talk about it. If you are going to do STD testing, you don't want to get into a situation where somebody's saying, well, come on, why do we have to do STD testing? I mean, how many people have you slept with? And then you go, oh, like 10. You don't want to do that. You can just say it doesn't matter. I think for us both to be safe, we should do STD testing. You do need to talk about any possible recent exposure but not the details, and you need to get tested. I mean, that's what a responsible person does. These are the things a good and honest and fair person reveals to anyone coming into their life and building a relationship. You can also say, sometimes I've been reckless, but I was young and I don't do that anymore. But you don't really have to reveal all these things. You don't want to be accused of bait and switch by revealing intense things too far into the relationship, but you also don't want to blurt everything out and scare the bejesus out of someone on the second date. You have to look for balance and moderation so that you're not 2 months into a serious relationship and then trying to tell somebody that you've been married 8 times or you were once accused of murder, okay? I mean, those are extreme examples. But think about the right time and the right place for revelations. Not too early and not too late. Months down the road is not the time to be revealing big and necessary details. You just don't need to do this. If you cheated on your high school sweetheart and have never cheated in an adult relationship, you don't have to talk about that. If you were very promiscuous after a serious breakup, you don't have to talk about that. What are the chances that this is going to come to light down the road? They're probably not. You don't want to cast yourself in a falsely positive light, but you don't want to cast yourself in a falsely negative light either. And I always tell people, like if you're recovering from something, and I've always had a lot of clients that are in 12-step programs, you can tell somebody what you're recovering from and how long you've been in recovery and what you do to maintain recovery, but you don't have to go into the details about all of it, especially if they're not a person that has that issue. You don't have to drag them to a 12-step meeting. You don't have to make them understand. And they don't have to understand. Many people who are not recovering from anything have never heard of it, and that's not a negative thing. It's a positive thing. But don't be ashamed of being in recovery, but don't tell the other person every single thing there is to know about 12-step programs or whatever recovery program you're in. If you're brand new to sobriety or getting clean or whatever, you should probably tell somebody, but you probably shouldn't be dating in the first place. But if you're clean and sober for years, you can just say, look, this is me. If you have questions about it, I'll be happy to answer them. But don't act like it's a wart or something that you need to explain to everyone. And don't answer a million questions like, so did you drink alcoholically? Did you drive drunk? Did you smoke a lot of pot? I mean, what'd you do? Instead of being peppered with questions, sit back and ask yourself if you really want to be with somebody who's asking all these intrusive questions. I mean, you drinking alcoholically when you were actively drinking and now you've got 7 years sobriety, it really doesn't have anything to do with that. If you have 7 years sobriety and you're going to AA, chances are you did drink alcoholically, but you don't have to say it like it's a mea culpa. Something like being in recovery is your business and information for someone to know so that they don't wonder where you are and the night you go into meetings, they don't think you're cheating on them or something. There's no reason to answer every question about your active past. If you're comfortable with taking a non-addict, non-alcoholic to a meeting, do it. But if you're not, then don't. You want to know how many times someone was married, if they had children, if they support those children, if they're gainfully employed, if they've always been gainfully employed, if they have DUIs, if they have child support arrears, if you have 17 baby mamas, it's like you want to know. You have to decide what's important for you and ask it when it's getting serious. Don't leave the 4th or 5th date when you're talking exclusivity to start talking about deal breakers. And if the other person has a deal breaker that is something you're guilty of, let it be okay. You just don't fit together. It's not a judgment. Don't lie and don't try to fit into a box you don't belong in. If someone reveals something to you that shows a broken moral compass, you need to move on that. You need to move. No matter what other awesome qualities they have, if they have revealed something that is morally reprehensible to you, you need to go, you know what? This isn't working out for me. Goodbye. And you don't have to sit there and explain it or get into an argument or get into a debate over it. You also don't have to try to figure out how to make this fit with your moral compass. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Let it be okay. Make that commitment to yourself to leave, and that you will leave. Not everybody is going to like you. Not everybody is going to be the right partner. And the healthier you are, the less people in the world are going to be the right partner for you. The right partner has similar morals, values, and view of the world. If you have a past that includes sexual experimentation or drug experimentation or something similar, you don't need to talk about that with anyone. You put it in the past and leave it there. But you also have to respect your partner's leaving things in the past like that too. The lesson is there has to be a balance when it comes to revealing yourself to others. You don't want to dump everything on everyone. A first date or a first outing is not the time or place to tell all your dirty, dark secrets. You don't put yourself out there for the masses. You never know who knows somebody who might know you. It's not the time to tell your life story or to apologize for things that you've done wrong. Don't think, oh, I need to get this out of the way for people that might not even be a fit for you. Think about who this person is before revealing yourself to somebody. Is someone worthy enough to know all about you? Don't be an apologist for things that you have done wrong in the past, that you have learned from, and that you will never do again. You are a precious, unique individual. Scars and all, warts and all, history and all. Honor that preciousness. If you have made mistakes and learned from them, that says more about you than someone who hasn't learned from their mistakes or has claimed they've never made mistakes. Sometimes it's never the time or place to tell them because you don't need to. Other times you need to wait and reveal slowly who you are as a relationship builds. Do not be afraid to say who you are, but you don't have to dump all your garbage on the table. The right person will love you, scars and warts and all. The wrong person will not. And you don't want somebody who's going to throw it in your face. Recently in the Facebook group, there was a woman who said that whenever her and her ex would get into a fight, he would say, well, I could see why your parents abandoned you. Anyone who says something cruel like that is somebody who you should have not trusted with your hurtful information. You don't pummel a person with every little thing you've ever done that you're not proud of, but you also don't give people ammunition to use against you in an argument. And if this is a person who will do something like that, you don't want them anyway. Do the standards and compatibility inventory. Do the boundary. Figure out what's negotiable, what's non-negotiable, and what might be negotiable for the right person. Use this list and that inventory to get yourself in physical, mental, and emotional readiness and become willing to walk away the minute you hear what you cannot live with. You have to decide now that the only relationship you're willing to be in is one that is good for you and that you will never have to sacrifice your own morals, values, and standards for someone with different ones. You have to know that you have the right to your 3 a.m. person. And if they're not your 3 a.m. person, that's fine. Move them out of the way because you'll never meet your 3 a.m. person if you keep hanging on to people who are not that one. Reveal yourself little by slow and reveal it to the right people for the right reason. And only reveal that stuff which you think absolutely positively must be revealed. And take a while to think about that. I mean, different people have different opinions on that. Like I said, I told my husband, Michael, that I had been in a physically abusive relationship. I didn't tell him I had been in 5 or 6 of them. I just said that my ex had been abusive and that I had hit him with a restraining order, and that's when the marriage was absolutely positively over. But I didn't go into the details about it. I didn't want him to ever see me as a person who was a victim. You know, there were people that I had dated early on after my separation, but my first husband and I were high school sweethearts, and we broke up for a while, and I went out with other people. But I was married to him all through my 20s. So when I first started dating and I was still recovering from the PTSD from being in an abusive relationship all those years, I was blurting it out all over the place because I was going to therapy, I was going to meetings, I was going to support groups, I was doing this, I was doing that. So I felt like I had to tell everybody what was going on in my life. And also I did the, I'm so fragile and I've been abused and don't mistreat me and don't look at me wrong. And that's just not the way. you go into new relationships. You have to go into dating realizing that you are a precious and unique human being. And yes, you've made mistakes. You don't have to reveal those mistakes to absolutely everyone. You don't have to pay for your sins forever and ever, but you do have to reveal things to people that's absolutely important for them to know. And again, you don't have to go into all the gory details. So I'm going to do another podcast on the standards and compatibility inventory and dating after getting out of a relationship. So please send email to meanladytalkingpodcast@gmail.com and I'll answer them. And also please know that if you've already sent me email, I do plan on answering your email on the podcast. This was sort of an intro to it. So take care, everybody. And remember, please review the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you listen to it, because that really helps. And stay in touch. And again, if you want to come on the podcast, I would love to have my listeners on. So please send me email, meanladytalkingpodcast@gmail.com, and take care of yourself. You can do this. Take care. Bye-bye.